Salahaddin Yusuf ibn Ayyub, the king who grants victory, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. Salahaddin is hailed as one of the greatest generals of all times. But I find this fascination with Salahaddin, the general, extremely weird, especially considering that he only has a 25% win rate against crusaders in field battles. That's right, Salahaddin, the famed military general, lost 75% of the battles he fought against the crusaders, and a lot of these defeats came when Salahaddin had overwhelming numbers at his side. But why was that? Why did Salahaddin lose so often? And how come he gets to be known as a military mastermind despite his terrible military record in the field? Let's dive into it. But before we get to the video, please subscribe and leave a like. Enjoy. Before I start my rant, I think it is important to make the distinction between Salahaddin the general and Salahaddin the politician, the statesman and nation builder. Salahaddin was the greatest ruler the Islamic world had seen in medieval period. In my opinion, only second to Sultan Tuğrul of the Seljuks. He came from almost nothing. He was born into lesser Kurdish nobility. His family wasn't a part of the Turkic military caste or the Fatimid court, which ruled the Islamic world at the time. Through merit, he rose up in the ranks and even managed to take over Egypt, despite having no support base of his own. He played the Egyptians, the Mamluks, the Crusaders, the Turks, and his master Nur ad-Din against each other, and ended the 200-year-long Fatimid rule. He solved the chronic problem of the Islamic world at the time, the lack of legitimacy, which kept the Muslims divided. He created a new form of legitimacy, where he derived the right to rule through holy war, through jihad. His political brilliance led to the creation of the first Islamic empire since the Seljuks. All that being said, his military prowess leaves a lot to be desired. Out of the 8 field battles he fought against the crusaders, he lost 6. The statistics look even worse when we just look at the major battles that were fought between large armies and had decisive results, in which Salahaddin only won in Hattin. And this isn't about the crusaders being that much better in the field militarily. In comparison, Salahaddin's predecessors in jihad, like Imad ad-Din Zengi, won all of his major battles, and Nur ad-Din had a 67% win rate. There is an argument that can be made in the quality of foes Salahaddin and Nur ad-Din faced, as Nur ad-Din didn't fight Richard the Lionheart. But then, Nur ad-Din never had the resources of Salahaddin, so I think it is fair to compare the results of the two leaders. Even in the short Crusader period, Salahaddin doesn't deserve the title of the best Muslim general, let alone being one of the greatest generals of all time. But why is that? What was the shortcoming of Salahaddin? Why did he keep losing? Salahaddin was a chess master. Now, I know this sounds like a compliment, but it really isn't. Not for a medieval commander at least. In chess, the player has complete command of his pieces. You can set elaborate traps, execute complicated maneuvers, and you can always depend on your pieces to do their job. But that's not how battles work, especially without modern armies and communication systems. In a perfect world, the commands would be delivered through the military hierarchy. A medieval army didn't have a clear command hierarchy that reached all the way to the common soldier. In Salahaddin's case, most of his troops were tribal cavalry, be it Arabian cavalry or Turkic ones. And these troops just followed the others around them. A medieval general could give commands and draw elaborate plans, but he could never trust his soldiers to execute his plans properly. Let's visualize this. Imagine this situation, where your infantry is about to get attacked by the enemy. You have the left and right flanks and the center, and a reserve of heavy cavalry. In theory, it is a good idea to slowly retreat the left flank, for example, which would create an opening for your cavalry to easily flank the advancing enemy right wing. However, the more probable outcome with a medieval army is that your soldiers in the left flank would get confused, many of them would permanently run away, mistaking a temporary retreat with a full retreat. And then it's very likely that your men in the center will think that your left flank is routed and that they're about to get encircled, even though the retreat was just a part of your plan. Now your men in the center are panicking and they will start running from the field. And what you get instead of a clever feint retreat is a full-on rout. What really won the medieval battles were surprise and initiative. Strike first, strike hard, strike when the enemy doesn't expect you to strike. Then you can make the medieval mechanics work for you. The battle will be over before your enemy can form up and react to what you're doing. This was the main quality of all great military minds of history. Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Even under the worst circumstances, even faced against the greatest odds, they saw the opportunity to take the initiative and strike where it mattered. Ability to employ calculated aggression made them exceptional and, more often than not, won the battles. Let's analyze Salahadin's battles now. In Montgisard, Salahadin was content to spread his army and was beaten decisively after a surprise attack by Baldwin IV. In Arsuf, he wanted to slowly harass and strangle the crusaders. This worked for him, until once again the crusaders took the initiative and surprised Salahadin's forces. In Acre, the same thing happened. Due to a lack of initiative on Salahadin's side, the crusaders won the day. Salahadin had several opportunities to destroy the crusaders before they could form up, but he refused to take a calculated risk. He played it safe and let the crusader armies gather their forces. Salahadin's plans a lot of the time just depended on playing safe and the enemy remaining perfectly predictable. Only then his plans could work like clockwork. This is in stark contrast to his contemporary, Richard, who always made the situation work for him through pure aggression and vigor. In Arsuf, when his cavalry broke formation, he took the initiative and committed to the charge, even though it wasn't the plan. In Jaffa, he did the unthinkable and led an unexpected seaborne attack, which once again surprised Salahadin and gained Richard the victory. We see the only major example of Salahadin's tactics working in the Battle of Hattin. Salahadin prepared the perfect trap. He baited the crusaders into marching through the desert, while he laid in ambush. The crusaders were already defeated by the sun and the thirst by the time they reached Hattin. But these tactics simply weren't dependable in the long term, as battles are never fully predictable. Even here, the core problem with Salahadin's battle blueprint remains. It's too reactive. The crusaders had to march through a certain route, they had to take the bait, and disregard the logistical problems. In Hattin, from the start of the battle to the end, the crusaders had almost 24 hours to do something different and get out of Salahadin's trap. Compare this to Montgisard, for example. The Battle of Montgisard was over the moment Salahadin saw the crusaders attacking his dispersed and unprepared army. The attack came so swiftly and at the right moment, there was nothing that could be done. Speed, surprise, and aggression. All the qualities that Salahadin lacked. At the end of the day, Salahadin was very good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, by always placing himself on the back foot and letting the enemy lead the fight. One argument I see in his defense is that while he may not have been the greatest tactician, he was a strategic mastermind. After all, even though he lost every battle he fought against Richard, he managed to prevent the Crusaders from taking Jerusalem. Now let's take a closer look into this argument. This argument is based around the fact that Richard failed to take Jerusalem despite winning all those victories. The problem with it is it's only focused on Jerusalem itself and ignores the resource imbalance to begin with. After Hattin, Salahadin was in control of what was called the Kingdom of Jerusalem. But with the Third Crusade, he loses the rich coastal areas to the Crusaders. This area may seem minor on a map, but it was the richest part of the kingdom, and more importantly, the Crusader control there allowed the Crusaders to remain as an existential threat to the Ayyubid rule. All the way until 14th century, the Crusader control of the Levantine coast would remain as a major headache to the rulers of Egypt. And that's not even mentioning the resource imbalance between Richard and Salahadin. Salahadin was fighting at his home territory. He could easily replace his losses. Meanwhile, Richard was operating thousands of kilometers away from his home base. Does it really take a strategic mastermind to win a stalemate here? Salahadin had everything going for him. And it's not like Salahadin avoided confrontation in a purposeful campaign to wear the Crusaders out. Only when his armies were repeatedly crushed, he completely focused on the war of attrition. And by then, it was too late. He had no other choice. By the time the Third Crusade ended, Salahadin's army was in ruins, his legitimacy in shambles, and half of his conquests were undone. We don't know how Salahadin would have fared internally following the crusade, as he died soon after, though we do know that by the end he wasn't very popular and there was serious opposition against him. So what does all this mean? Was Salahadin a bad general? Well, no, he was definitely a competent one. However, he wasn't special. He was very good at stacking the odds in his favor by making sure he had the numbers and the logistics on his side. But then, he more often than not wasted it all by waiting too long and being overcautious. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.